Welcome everyone to the AI Argument. This is Justin Collery and I'm Frank Prendergast, and we are going to argue about some of the latest AI news that's been hitting the various medias this week. So I reckon the massive one, well, for me anyway, I don't know what you think, but for me the massive one was Mustafa Suleyman and God knows
I'm
who
not
else on his team.
I'm not
Moved,
surprised you picked Mustafa Suleyman because I mean
yeah.
he's a doomer. He's a slow down merchant. He wrote a whole book about it.
Would you
So he
call him
did.
a
The coming
doomer?
wave.
I'd call him a very balanced individual.
there was um there was a lot of interesting commentary on the internet about it. I mean, I do think it was interesting. Why did you find it interesting?
Well, so yeah, so let's contextualize it first. So Mustafa Suleyman, like he's one of the people who's been involved in this right from the get-go. Like he co-founded DeepMind, which was acquired
Mhm.
by Google, which, arguably really one of the companies that kind of kicked off this whole current um, boom in AI. So co-founded DeepMind, acquired by Google, then left and started Inflection, and their kind of famous product is Pi, I guess I describe it as they were trying to develop an empathetic, voice-based AI chatbot.
Yeah.
Um,
And this is interesting for two reasons, I think. Right. So first thing that I think is really interesting about this is here's a pop quiz for you, Frank, Friday evening. In 1980, how many computer companies were in the UK?
oh, good grief! I have no idea. I have the
Four,
clue.
400 is the right answer. By
Okay,
nine, by 1990, how many computer companies were in the UK?
not a clue. Go on, tell us.
One. ARM was the only UK chip company that got left. So,
Wow.
and I think that's the first thing that's really interesting. This you've got all these AI startups. We've got Cohere, we've got Anthropic, we've got OpenAI, we have Pi, we have all of these different companies, and there's going to be a big reckoning. Like every computer industry, every computer segment, there's going to be a big reckoning where everybody's scurrying around trying to carve out a niche, and then things like this happen.
Yeah.
So clearly, the business
Yeah.
model wasn't working for them.
So yeah,
And
so they Mustafa Suleyman has moved to Microsoft with a
yes,
big bunch of his team. So
he tried to
that's
sell to Microsoft, and they didn't buy it.
now that's interesting. I did not know that because I did wonder why Microsoft didn't just buy Inflection outright, and I assumed it must have been something to do with the rest of the team in Inflection. But so clearly I was wrong. I actually asked Pi about this earlier, but I didn't know the
Know
details.
the deets. So what I understand, sources close to the couple tell me that they tried to sell the company to Microsoft for $4 billion and never fight with the gorilla, right? So Microsoft have the financial and the intellectual capital to say able to say yes or no to these deals. So they said no. And what Mustafa appears to have done is the way that I read this deal is that he has sold. It's an acqui-hire is how they call it. So they're hiring all the people, and it
Mm.
looks to me like they're buying the hardware.
And they're
So
and they're
the
licensing they're licensing the LLM that drives Pi to be used in the products as well. So it's kind of like they've done everything but acquire the company outright, which is why it seems like a very like. Do you know why they would choose to go this route?
oh because Mustafa's back was against the wall. He tried to sell, couldn't. Microsoft said no, we're not gonna buy your technology. I think Mustafa was also being, and I've been in this position before, right, where you have investors and you've taken people's money. You do feel, somewhat, and it's not worked out, right? It's clear to you that it hasn't
Mm.
worked out. You will you will try to get some money back for your investors. So by selling the hardware, it gives the investors back some money. From what I've read, I think it gives them back all of their money. The staff get hired by Microsoft, so they get looked after. And Microsoft are clearly aiming to dominate this space. So they've got the smarts, the brains, they've got the capital, and you may have noticed there was a quote that we saw from the court case between Elon Musk and OpenAI, where Satya the CEO of Microsoft, is quoted as saying that if OpenAI disappeared in the morning, it wouldn't matter. They own all the IP, they have all the smarts in-house, they have the data, and they have the infrastructure in order to push the AI project forward. And this is sort of tied into that, which is, that they're, and also you can imagine, right? OpenAI might be feeling this. By the way, is why things aren't going to slow down; they're only going to get faster. So OpenAI might feel like they got the keys to the kingdom, and they have all the intellectual capital. And Microsoft are putting themselves in a strong position to say, "Well, guys, we don't really need you," and we know that this deal that we have has a sunset clause in it, which is when we get to AGI, the deals, it doesn't include AGI. So Microsoft are going hell for leather to develop AGI as well. So this is Frank Friday again. So we have OpenAI who are trying to develop AGI. We have Microsoft are going for it hell for leather. Anthropic, I've been using the Anthropic models for the last 2 weeks flat out. Constantly blown away by them. The new one, Haku, which is their smallest and cheapest model, fantastic, and it's so fast. It's really, really good. You've got Google have released just this week general release of Gemini to the public, so everybody can use it, and it's free, I believe. 1.5 million token context window, brilliant, and perfect recall, I understand, within that context window. So a lot happening, and I think this is Microsoft aiming to dominate the space.
I did, because you were saying about that quote where they were saying, yeah, even if OpenAI disappeared from us, we'd be able to storm ahead. Like, I found that interesting as well, because there's really mixed messages coming from Microsoft about the relationship with OpenAI, depending on which article you read, because some of the other articles were saying, no, everything's rosy with OpenAI. We love them. It's fabulous. This is totally different. And this is for different purposes. And this is, but clearly there are clear signals coming from Microsoft that this is very much part of telling OpenAI that they are not maybe as critical to the endeavors as they thought they were, and that it clearly as well stems from the whole drama where Sam Altman was fired and then rehired, and Microsoft tried to smooth it over and say, oh no, it's fine, everything's fine, it's all rosy. But clearly Microsoft since then have been a little bit edgy about OpenAI and how stable they are internally.
Absolutely, and very smart. I mean, with these types of people that you're dealing with, I mean, what comes out of their okay, this is I don't know what the nice way is to say this, right? But in a way, what they say is deflection, right? They're trying to put ideas into your head and make you think that one thing is reality. But really, what you have to do is look at their actions to understand what their true intent is. So while they say everything is perfect with OpenAI and it's wonderful, the actions would say otherwise.
Yeah.
And it's fairly obvious to me that they're going hell for leather to develop their own models. They released this week, by the way, Microsoft released their own version of developer. What was it called? They gave it another name. So it was their own version of Devlin, or Devin, I should say. Devlin was another developer I used to work with years ago. Their own version. They reached their own version of Devon. And again, I would say Microsoft have enormous economic incentives, both internally and externally, to come up with an agent framework where you can just get an AI to go ahead and develop a piece of software. I mean, I would love, by the way, I cannot wait for this to happen. Whereby, when we're talking here, just before we get onto this, I can just give a couple of messages to my AI and it's off developing software in the background. That would be amazing. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah. And did you see the I've forgotten the name of it now, but the new voice activated AI interface that they're saying basically you get a little round device, but you'll be able to talk to it and it'll do stuff on your laptop.
Yes, I haven't been able to look into this yet, but certainly interacting with voice. I mean, I'm sure you've interacted with ChatGPT with voice.
Only a little bit. I'm not. I actually prefer. I think I'm an outlier here, where I actually prefer typing to voice interactions. I even voice notes. I hate voice notes.
You're a very strange man, Frank.
Do you use voice notes? Like AI aside, do you send people?
Do you use voice notes? No, I think that is weird. Voice notes is weird, and if you sent me a voice note, I would think that was weird. But in terms of communicating with it, and if I want to know something, I find it much easier, much faster to talk to it and hear the response than to be getting shorter thumbs and trying to type into it.
Right. Like, so have you used Pi? Mustafa Suleyman's? No,
I didn't use Pi. I tried it once, I think, when it was released at the start.
Yeah, which is probably, I mean, this is the thing is that so they have said they were not able to make it profitable, which I
Yep.
don't even know how they were intending to, because it's available free to everyone, because they wanted AI to be available and democratic, and that was part of their mission. But I've used it, but I think it's fascinating, and I think it's amazing from the perspective of, oh my God, I'm living in the future. The sci-fi future that I watched as a kid, I now have access to it on my smartphone. Unbelievable. But it's kind of like a toy. I couldn't figure out like how I would actually use it practically. Now, maybe that's because I didn't use it enough and I just didn't find the use cases. But that aspect of it worries me a little bit. Not just, in terms of,
Which aspect now? The bit that you couldn't
so
find something useful to do with it, or the fact that it didn't do something useful?
no, so the fact that one of the reasons that Mustafa Suleyman has gone to Microsoft is because they did not make inflection profitable, or Pi certainly profitable. There was also in the news recently.
Why does that worry you though? I mean, I guess why is that concerning for you?
So I just mean in terms of the entire AI landscape, how many of
Okay.
these companies, and you kind of mentioned this at the start about we're going to see this kind of big unification, but like, you know, we are quite possibly in an AI bubble right now, because a lot of these companies have not figured out how to make money. They are doing the really traditional tech startup thing of, well, let's just acquire loads of users and we'll figure out profitability later. Um,
All right.
hope
That's a
and
that's a
hopefully,
really good that's a really good point. That's a really good point, right? So, um, if you look at the different types of technology that drives AI, so look at cars, self-driving cars. There is a qualitative difference between Tesla cars and every other car that tries to do the same trick. And the reason that there's a qualitative difference between Tesla and every other car is because they have millions of hours of data and video and telemetry from their cars driving. And so it gives them, unless the other car companies cop on really quickly and fit the same types of sense. I mean, if you were really smart and you were Volkswagen or Mercedes, you would put cameras all around your cars, and you would have distance sensors and so on. And even if it was never self-driving, it will be in the contract when you buy the car that the video is going back to Germany, so that they can analyze that video and use it to train their new cars. And so data is fantastically important. Um, and the size of your model and the compute power. So Meta appear to be serious in the game, even though they haven't really released a model yet, right? But they have data and they certainly
mhm,
have compute power. And when you saw OpenAI having the humanoid robot and interacting with the humanoid robot, that's key. A big factor of that is data. So it's another way. And in fact, if you Jan LeCun, right, who's the head scientist for Meta, often talks about the fact that a 4-year-old child receives more data through
mhm,
their eyes than all of ChatGPT 4 has been trained on. And so that's why you would create humanoid robots, so that you have that input and all that. You also hear about these people talking about real world models. So, does the AI have a real world model internally, or is it just a parrot? Okay, and again, this comes down to experiential data. So if it can see and interact with the world, well, then it's more likely that you're going to be able to create a model which understands the world at a very sort of intuitive level, which is what they're trying to do. So I think that's what's going on. So I think, and go back to the 400 companies to one, right? And how
yeah,
many Googles are there in the world, right? There's one.
yeah,
How many Microsofts are there? There's one, right? In the IT world, there tends to be one. And in this case, this one, maybe two or three, right? Because I think what's going to happen is you're going to end up with Microsoft being the one in the business end, and Google are going to be the one on the consumer end. And I don't know where Meta fit into it. I don't know exactly what's going to happen here,
mm,
but you will end up with just one big player. And I think that's what's happening here. So you're going to see a lot more. I was actually really worried for Anthropic, because I thought they were going to fall for the same reason. And they're sort of tied to Amazon. They're also do some work with Google. But their latest models are really good. So it comes down to capability, and capability is determined by compute and data. So as long as your models are capable, here's a really big problem, right? So long as your models are capable, right,
mm.
people will continue to use you and continue to get funding. But as soon as your models start to fall behind the state of the art, you'll quickly fall by the wayside. and you'll stop getting funding. And that drives, Frank, drives more capable AIs, right? It makes the technology move faster, because if you don't move as fast as the fastest guy, you're going to go out of business.
So what would your prediction be for Inflection now? So they have a licensing deal with Microsoft, but they're in a kind of a weird position.
It's not that weird. They hire all the brains. They haven't paid. I don't know if they've officially acquired the IP, but sure, the people that worked in Inflection now work for Microsoft. A lot of them do, and whatever product was developed there will now just be just chewed up inside the Microsoft machine and deployed with their AI models. Microsoft, it's obvious to me that Microsoft aim to have a model that's at least as good or better than OpenAI's one. That's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, but so do you not think that spells out does that not spell out an eventual death for Inflection themselves as a separate
Yes.
entity? Oh yeah, okay.
Yes.
This was my question. Yeah, gotcha.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm not in a long. Not it won't be a slow death. Like 6 months, 12 months. I would say it'll be gone.
Wow. Yeah. And a stable, I read the other day as well, just kind of tangentially related, or not tangentially related, but Stable Diffusion apparently are in trouble as well.
Okay.
One
Now
of the
this is.
bigger...
I didn't read this, so maybe you could tell me a bit more about that.
Well, I was just reading that they're experiencing a whole raft of resignations, and I think it was Forbes that I was reading it on, looked into it, and managed to get a look at some of the financial details, and they are just money is just flying out, and none is coming back in.
Yeah. This is going to happen a lot. So it is. I mean, as I said, I would expect there to be 2 or 3 big players, and they'll be defined by the area that they partake in or not, right? And also, it becomes, if they do get closer, this particular technology is interesting because the closer you get to AGI, the more good it is at helping you to develop AGI. So there's a compounding effect within that, and that takes me to, for me, what was the most interesting thing that happened this week. I have a little quote for you. So, Sam Altman was quoted this week. This makes me very uncomfortable, this whole conversation, right? But I have to say it because for me, it's the defining argument about AI and should you speed up, should you slow down. So Sam Altman was asked, what do you think an impressive AGI would do? Right. And his answer was, he said, this personally is important to me. I don't know if this is the right definition, but I think when a system can significantly increase the rate of scientific discovery in the world, that's a huge deal. Right. So that's his definition of AI, AGI. And that's what he says he thinks is possible in the next decade. In fact, I think he said by 2030, he believes that to be possible.
Right.
That's mind blowing. Right. Mind blowing. So let's just think about that for a second, right? In the entire population of the planet, there are 8 billion people. Now, how many of those people are actually involved in scientific discovery? It's a monumentally small number, okay? So between 0 and 20, you're a child, and between 60 and 80, you're retired, right? So of the 8 billion, 4 billion potentially, right, can be involved in scientific discovery. And then out of that 4 billion, I would guess that maybe 95% are just surviving, right? They're farmers, they work in insurance companies, they're marketeers, they're actors, they're not, contributing to scientific discovery. They're just, doing other jobs, right? So you've got maybe tops 5%, right? And of those 5%, if you think of all the hours that are in the day, they spend a third of their time in bed asleep. They spend a third of their time eating and going to the toilet and all that sort of good stuff, right? And then they wake up on a Monday and they're hungover and stuff. So of all the hours, it's maybe 1% of all time is spent on scientific discovery. And that 1% has got us iPhones, and it's got us computers, and it's got us the internet, and it's got us vaccines and all that sort of good stuff. Now, the day that AGI is invented, we could create an AGI for every single one of us. 8 billion AGIs, all of which are constantly inventing, pushing forward the frontiers of science. Now, again, right, and to look at this from a money point of view, right, if you think of what's happened over the last 50 years, right, on average, there's a growth rate of maybe somewhere between 3 and 8%, depending, right, on what measure. Stock market grows at about 8%, your wages grow at about 3%, and that's how quickly your standard of living increases. But if you got now 8 billion AGIs, so 100 times more intelligence, working on pushing forward science. And that's, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what gives us more productive, right? And makes us all a bit richer. So you potentially, right, have 100 times more intelligence going towards those problems. I mean, that's a fantastic place to be. And I think that's why I'm so keen to move it. Yeah, say, look, we should go for this. Like this is, and I think that's why Microsoft are so keen on developing this technology, because they see that too. And Sam Altman clearly sees it in what he's saying. You know that that's the way. And so when people say, oh well, we need to be a little bit careful, or we should slow this down, I'm like, no, that's the future I'm looking for. That's what we're going for.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, and I do think it would. I do think that applying AI in that way is clearly the huge potential benefit. I still don't think that mitigates the risk, and so I think we do. I absolutely think we do need to be careful. But as a kind of a tangential thing, did you see Elon Musk's comments? And sorry, I know these aren't groundbreaking or new or anything, but he was in the media this week as well, saying that we won't get the benefit, we won't get these huge benefits of AGI because we simply won't have the power. So he was much more focused on, like, literally we won't have the electricity to power the AI. He was much more focused on that than, say, compute, because I think because compute is constantly being improved upon, and quantum computing is on the horizon, and but he's just saying at a very basic level, the power won't be there for us to reap the benefits or get to the next level.
Yeah, yes. I mean, and I think that him and Sam Altman have said the same thing, that it is both compute and energy are going to be the things that
Mm.
are going to be, the most important, the currency of the next 100 years. And I think it's kind of funny because a lot of that power is going to come from solar power. And if you think, if God had a sense of humor, where am I going to put all the oil? I'll put it under the sand. And then when you run out of oil, I'm going to make the two most valuable things: sand, which is what's used to make computer chips, and sunlight, which is why there was sand there in the first place. So they win again. Incredible to me. So yes, those are the thing. You see, the way that I think about this, Frank, is let's say you and me go for holidays, right, up to
Let's do it.
Colorado.
Let's do it, Justin.
Let's do it, right? And we're up the Colorado hills, right? I don't know how to drive a car, so I brought my chopper, right, a big motorbike, and it's snowing outside. It's very, very snowy. And then Frank starts getting a heart attack, right? And you're gonna die, right? So like, Frank, get to the chopper. And he's like Ernie, right? But it's snowing outside, right? So I'm like, Frank, there's a 1% chance that if I drive top speed down this mountain in the snow on my chopper to get you to the hospital, there's a 1% chance that it's going to kill both of us. And we're both going to die in a horrible, horrible motorbike accident. But there's a 100% chance that you're going to die if I leave you here. So what do you want to do? Do you want to take the risk, or do you want to stay here? I'm take the risk, Frank. Let's go. Let's get to the chopper.
Are you? Yeah, but there isn't 100% chance that we're going to die if we stay put, is there?
Eventually, Frank, there is.
Well, okay, eventually. So, are you saying AI is going to actually?
Let me put it in a different way for you, right?
Are you
In the next
are
10
we are we
years.
are you moving? Are you jumping way ahead to where we upload ourselves?
No, no, well, not quite, right? But let's say Sam Altman is correct, right? We have AGI before 2030, let's say, right? So the next 6 years. And we put it together, we put it towards scientific research and all that sort of good stuff, right? We're both men of a certain age that every time we go to a doctor, they like to stick their fingers in places they shouldn't stick them, right? And so there's at least a decent chance, or there's a chance that one of us could get prostate cancer or some other type of disease in the next 10 years. There's also a really good chance that AI will solve that for us. In fact, this week the NHS started using an AI system to spot cancer in women, breast cancer, so it was. And it was able to identify thousands of instances of very small breast cancer when it was still safe to be operated on, that otherwise would have gone undetected. And those women can now have surgery, and it means that they're not going to get sick later. And the same could happen for us for prostate cancer and lung cancer and God knows what else. And so, and those people will definitely die People will this is why I get, we talked about regulation. I'm like, no, waste of time. It's regulation in this instance will kill people
Yeah,
because it will stop cures from being developed, which absolutely will save lives.
yeah. Well, that is so. First of all, that was a fantastic story. I mean, that was just a fantastic piece of news, and fantastic because it fits in an absolutely real world scenario. They were performed on, as my understanding was, that the AI was looking at mammograms that like would have been happening anyway. It wasn't. It's not like so.
Yep.
So it is a genuine early detection system that has real world applications and impacts. Incredible. I did notice when I was reading the article, and this is where I now start to go, oh my God, am I starting to agree with Justin on some of this?
Yeah, you're in trouble then.
Because I was reading the article and it was saying that the system was not able to reap the benefits that some other systems are able to, that some other AI systems are able to, in that it was not able to learn as it was used, because obviously there are huge personal privacy issues around medical records. And so I was reading that and I was thinking, wow, that is fascinating. If we just look at that specific example, are we better off giving up all of our privacy as it relates to medical records in order to reap the benefits of an AI being able to learn from our records and give us huge health benefits back in return? The problem with
Totally,
all,
yes.
well, but
But
the
you
problem with
you
all
should
that,
have the choice. You should have the choice, Frank. You should
mm,
be able to say yes or no. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. I actually did it this week. My mother, in fact, had gone for a scan for a particular thing. And I said, look, do you mind if I just put this through AI just to see if it spots anything? Right. And we did it and we were all okay with
mm,
it and we were comfortable with doing that. And so we did. It was an interesting test. But I totally think yeah, it really annoys me when you ask a medical question or a legal question to an AI and it goes, I'm sorry, you should consult a doctor about that. I'm not going to no, I wouldn't have asked you if I wanted to be, have my hand held. Answer the goddamn question. I'm clearly okay with getting a dodgy answer. And if I want to upload a scan of my brain to see if there's anything there or not, tell me what's the answer is. That's why I'm doing it. And there should be a checkbox to say, I'm cool and use this for training data. I'd like for my kids also to be, better, healthier as a result of my scans. And I think that's, by the way, and also a great use of AI and the technology, which is I would love to be able to have my medical records stored in a way which would benefit my children after me. Because if I have genetic things that are going on with me, well, they should know about that too. So there should be safe and secure ways to share your medical information in a way which benefits not just me, but everybody else.
yeah, as long as it wasn't utilized in any other way, shape, or form by the corporations who would ultimately potentially have access to the data.
Yeah, you see, I'm give me the benefits today, and I hear you. I think what you're worried about is that they'll go and use it to develop, maybe certain drugs that are tailored, and they're going to try and profiteer over the fact that I know that, Justin is bald and and Frank's blind, and therefore, we can make these special drugs to cure them, but only a little bit, so they keep trying the drugs, right? That's the ethical issue, I guess, that you're trying to get to. But I
Yeah,
mean,
or,
that's no,
or it
it's no
gets
good.
wrapped
It's
up.
no good being ethical if you're dead, Frank.
But you do, I mean, yeah, surely you have to see that there's a balancing act here between, I mean, even when we talked about social media advertising, you even said, yes, I agree, your personal information should remain personal, and yet here you are also on the other side of it, totally willing to open up your medical records and just lash it into an AI, and some AI corporation potentially has all that data then.
Oh,
Um,
yes. And listen to me. There was a story this week. I thought it was a funny thing. You had pointed out this story to me. It was to do with the Google Vlogger research project, which
mm,
was I could take a photo of Frank Prendergast there, and I could put it into this AI, and then the AI would create this really cool moving image of Frank, and everyone's like, "Wow, how does it do that?" It's Google, Frank. They have all videos of you already. They don't even need AI to take a photo of you and create a video. Anyway, it was the most incredible technology. I loved it. That was really good. But that is actually, I'm sort of joking, but I'm not joking, right? You don't know
Yeah,
what data has gone into train that model. And they could easily have taken
absolutely.
videos and photos of you. And that's why it's so good at predicting your movement.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we have unfortunately got to a point where we have almost accepted that we just don't have any privacy, because there's been so many privacy exposés over the last couple of however long. There's been so many exposés about companies misusing our private information that I think that they've had the opposite effect to what the journalists hoped. As I think the whistleblowers and the journalists hoped that we would go, oh no, this is horrendous, we need to claw back our privacy rights. And instead we've kind of gone, the horse has left the stable.
Well, no. Okay, I would disagree with you, because actually what's happened there is the benefit. Okay, so we've raised it, and I do think, right, you should be asked, right? So are you okay with us using this? And I think, in fact, even especially as artists, right, and writers and stuff like that, I think you should be asked, right? You should have a right to opt in or to opt out. And my medical records, my genes are mine. But I'm just saying that I'm totally comfortable giving it, right? It's like, yes,
Right,
please take it. I think that's
right.
and and what you're actually saying to me when people tried to raise a red flag on this and then people didn't seem to care is essentially the benefits of giving up your data far outweigh the risks. So if I do a search for wooden clogs, and then I get ads for wooden clogs for a week later. Well, I probably was interested in wooden clogs. I quite like wooden clogs, and it's great. I got a nice pair of wooden clogs. I'm okay with that. That's a fair trade from me. But other people may not agree, so that's why you should be asked.
Sure. Yeah, I think, well, I think that's a good note for us to end on. That one thing we can definitely agree on is that you should certainly be asked if they are going to take your data. You should definitely be asked. We can agree on that. As to how much data we should be willing to give up, I think, yeah, that's a whole other argument that we can get into next week.
Frank, just to be clear on this, after week 4, you did say earlier you're starting to agree with me.
I did say that there was a moment where I thought, oh dear, I can see the argument here. At least I can at least
Oh,
see the argument here for giving up this, for giving up the privacy for the benefit of early detection of cancer screening. I mean, that is incredible, and I certainly hope that test rolls on further and just becomes something that is just the norm. It would be absolutely amazing.
absolutely agreed,
There's
Frank.
so much we didn't even get to today, and by next week it'll be old news. But we'll see. We'll see. We'll see what
Well,
comes
there
up
we
in
go. That's the
the
fun,
week to come. A pleasure as always arguing with you
Frank.
about this stuff, and I will
Absolute
see you
pleasure.
next week.
Look forward to it. Talk to you next week.